The year ends with an increasingly worrisome situation in Europe. There are more reports of Russian sabotage, continuing violations of NATO airspace by Russia. Meanwhile, the war in Ukraine continues. Roger Hilton is with the global think tank Globsec. Hi, Roger.
Hi, good evening, Mitsumi. Good evening, Montreal.
So, Roger, Donald Trump has a new national security strategy. He says Europe faces a loss of national identity because of migration. Russia likes it, but a lot of people very concerned by this development.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the language is not necessarily so encouraging. I think it plays very much to sort of great powers. It prioritizes the commercialization of relations over morality or ideological commitment. But Mitsumi, more importantly, when it comes to Ukraine, my honest opinion about it is, this is not a huge shock in the presidential office. They're very much used to on and off again relations with the U.S., and also sort of, President Trump's affinity for President Putin, literally rolling out the red carpet. What Ukraine is most preoccupied right now about when it comes to the Trump administration is trying to ensure that they don't have to give away the Donbass at the moment. President Trump very publicly, very privately is trying to force a deal down, seeing a lot of weakness with President Zelensky. His government is engulfed in a corruption scandal. The front line is a bit patchy, and the EU is still trying to work out how to sort of access the Russian central bank immobilized funds in Belgium. So as I said, a tough situation for Ukraine, but they've been here before, and this is all about buying time until the next negotiations.
But Trump does seem to be aligning himself more with Russia. Is it fair to say then this is going to embolden Russia? It's already said that there is sabotage, the incursions into NATO airspace. There's even reports that it's deployed a spy ship near Scotland.
Well, of course, I mean, this was greeted with a warm applause in the Kremlin. I find for the Kremlin, at least, this is much more of a big strategic victory as opposed to tactical. The truth is that Russia is already emboldened. Over the course of the action, as you laid out, they've continued to do this with a lot of impunity. I think what's most important about this is while Europe cannot necessarily count on the US on some of these hybrid attacks, is the reaction of NATO and European partners in responding to it. It might have been a bit slow, but it is moving in the right direction. For all of the viewers, NATO has stood up 2 operations, one on the eastern flank, one in the Baltic Sea, watching undersea cables. Before we went on air, Mitsumi, Lithuania declared a state of national emergency with weather balloons flying over into its territory on hybrid attacks. And you referenced the Russian spy ship. I mean, as a result, the UK have now stepped a hybrid maritime force to try to deal with this. So Europeans are reacting to it. But as I said, this is much more of a greater win on a strategic level as opposed to tactical for the Russians.
So, Roger, what do you think we can expect in the new year? Is this going to escalate, or can we hope for some kind of resolution?
I think what we should all hope for first is that the winter is coming, so that the winter season should slow down the fighting a little bit, despite Vladimir Putin wanting to push a little bit. Look, you've had a couple of comments where President Putin said, one way or another, we're going to be taking back this territory. And President Zelensky, has every right to say that they're not going to give it up. Russia still is looking to take over about 30% of the Donbass. And within that 30% is a very critical, military deployment with a fortress line, which is important for military logistics. And President Zelensky and his team estimate that this would take another 4 years to conquer. On the flip side about it, while Ukraine ramps up its domestic arms production, the NATO Pure List, which is the priority Ukraine requirement list, had just got another $1 billion contribution, bringing the total contribution this year of arms from NATO to $5 billion. Canada threw in $200 million on top of that. So again, this is not the United States underwriting Ukrainian security moving forward, but Europe, under a very tough situation, is still providing arms to Ukraine, and things would get a little bit better on the economic front if they could just unlock this frozen money in Belgium.
And very quickly, Roger, because we're out of time, Canada has become the first non-European country to join the EU's security action for Europe. What exactly does it mean for Canada and for Europe?
Well, first off, it's great to end the segment on a positive news. first nation non-European to join it. First, this is access to European defense investment and procurement. This will open up new markets for Canadian defense companies in Europe. It will also provide an opportunity for suppliers in Canada to receive European investment. This is a great way to do capacity building with our most strategic ally. And most important for everybody this evening, it will diminish our over-reliance on the United States when it comes to arms production. Prime Minister Carney has been very strict. For every Canadian dollar spent on arms, 70% of it is going to the United States. So it will take a while till we see this manifest into something tangible on some of the big procurement options, but no small feat nonetheless, considering we beat the UK before getting in on it.
Okay. Thank you very much for this, Roger.
Happy holidays, Montreal.